Hello and welcome back to the Ninox Learning Channel. My name is Andy and I'm a Ninox programmer and trainer here at Nioxus Corporation. In this class, we're going to go back and look at a topic we studied many months ago, the Kanban view in Ninox. The reason I want to go back and take a look at this is because with the most recent release and update of Ninox, version 2.6, there have been some major enhancements and functional additions to the Kanban view that make it even more powerful and even easier to use. Before we dive in, I want to answer the question that I get most often: what is a Kanban? Where did the word come from? What does it mean? Kanban is a Japanese word that loosely translates in English to billboard or sign. The Kanban methodology or management technique was started by Toyota Corporation in the 60s. A development engineer named Taiichi Ono was studying the manufacturing techniques of the British during World War II, where they used what was called a two-box technique. And the idea became that we could use cards and put those cards in lanes to keep track of status of events, what did we need, supply and demand, production, inventory requirements. And the Kanban system started at Toyota as part of their larger initiative for just-in-time inventory and just-in-time manufacturing. So that's where the word Kanban comes from. That's what it means. Now, let's see what it can do. Let's look at a Kanban by first going into our invoices table. Here's a very simple, basic Kanban. Couple of concepts, if you've never seen one of these before, to get used to, is the idea of the card. Every record in the system is represented in its own lane by a card. This invoice on September 21st for $939, this is one card in the Kanban. This small business column, this is a lane or a swim lane in the Kanban, and all of the lanes taken together is the Kanban view itself. Sometimes this is referred to as a swim lane diagram because of its obvious resemblance to a swimming pool that's divided up into lanes with all activity happening one lane at a time or in separate lanes. It's a really powerful view because it utilizes this concept of the card. Now, we've seen the card before in the card listing. This is simply all the cards representing all of the items or records in a table displayed on screen. So this is the other place where we see the card concept, but in a Kanban approach, the cards are organized or categorized by at least one field, and we'll see in a little bit later on how we can group our Kanbans by multiple fields. But again, we have these 5 groups in our inventory, A, B, C, D, and E, and we have all of the different pieces of inventory within each group or lane. Some new things to keep in mind are, first of all, when in administrative mode with our red wrench glowing, we can grab, click and drag, and move lanes into a different presentation order left to right. If you are not in administrative mode, the changes you make will be visible during this session, but if you exit and were to come back in, the view would return to the way it was before you made the changes. If you are in administrative mode and you save the changes, this is what the Kanban will look like whenever you view it again, or at least until more changes are made. If you don't want to save these changes, simply go ahead and revert, and it'll go back to the A, B, C, D, E, left to right display that we saw when we got started. But again, this ability to grab and move the columns is something we didn't see when the Kanban was originally released, but is now part of the Ninox system, and it's a really nice tool to have. The next thing that I want to talk about, though, before we get into some of the new features, is how we actually build the Kanban. The critical concept here is that we categorize or group our content, specific records, according to some criteria. And there must be at least one criteria. In this Kanban, the grouping code or criteria is, are you in group A, B, C, D, or E? In this invoice Kanban, the grouping or criteria or designation is, what kind of business are you? Were you a government, a large corporation, maybe a startup or a small business? And each one of these different types of businesses, again, is represented in these movable, draggable swim lanes or lanes in the Kanban view. So it's tremendously important. In fact, it's mandatory if you are going to build a Kanban and use that as a way to visualize or view your data content, that you must have a commonly applied, standardized grouping mechanism. The best way to create such a mechanism is using the choice fields in Ninox. Here we see a choice field where we can specify the region. We only have so many choices, and there are 8, corresponding to the 8 different geographic regions of the country. And by selecting one of these regions, we are effectively grouping or categorizing this particular record or invoice document along with all other invoice documents that would be in, say, the West region. Choice options, and I'm going to go ahead and drill into this choice field, can be displayed as combo boxes, as radio buttons, which look like that, or they can be displayed as a switch or a ribbon, which looks like that. It does not matter how you display the choice field. All that matters is that you have a choice field with a defined group of selections or options that allow people to group or categorize one record with other records that share that categorization and apart from other records that don't. So let's go back and look at this Kanban by customer type. And now we see something a little bit different. When we were looking at, for example, the inventory Kanban or the invoice Kanban by group, it was a grayscale presentation because the grouping mechanism itself was a grayed out field or a simple data entry field. And again, I want to point that out. We can use this text field, and this is a simple text field, and type in a grouping or categorization code, but you run the risk of uppercase or lowercase or misspellings, and you might not get the standardization that you want. But because this field has no color associated with it, and because it is the field used to group our Kanban, the Kanban has no color going with it. If we were to go in and look at our invoices by customer region, now we see color. Where did this color come from? If we look at a record, here is the region choice field that we're using to group our Kanban, and we can see that every choice has a color associated with it. The color of the choice that the user makes, in this case, Northeast, which is this turquoise blue, will be the color adopted by that particular lane. The South is identified by a hot red, Southwest a burgundy, and green is used for the West. This green color in this lane corresponds to the green color used for all records categorized West. If you change the color, for example, if West is changed from this deep green to, let's say, this purple, that will be reflected again in the lane as it is presented on the Kanban, as you see right there. The other thing that I want to point out is the way we can move records across lanes in the Kanban in order to update the data. Let me show you what I mean. One of the most powerful ways to apply the Kanban is in an aging situation. Here is a common aging for our accounts receivable. Here are current bills that are less than 30 days old. Here are 4 invoices that are more than a month but less than 2 months outstanding. Here is our 3 to 4 month column, or up to 4 months. And here we see invoices that are older than 121 days and still unpaid. And finally, a couple of invoices that got so old that we turned them over for collection. As time progresses and these invoices remain unpaid, we're going to want to move or change their status. For example, let's look at the ASPACE invoice number 77048 for $1,898 back on April 16th. We can go in, we can go to the aging and say this is no longer in the 31 to 60 day bucket, it's in the 61 to 90 day bucket. And this invoice 77048, will now be right here in 90 day bucket, and there it is. We can go in, we can change or select a new grouping status, and the card will automatically move into the proper lane. But that requires a number of steps. 1 click to open it, a 2nd click, a 3rd click, a 4th click, just to move a card over 1 lane. The easier way to do it is using the new drag and drop technology that was introduced when the Kanban came out last year. We can simply grab a card and drag it into a different column. This invoice from Cavern Foods has been outstanding for $11,000 for quite some time. We're going to go ahead and turn that invoice over to a collection agency. Instead of using 4 mouse clicks to open the record, select a new record, close the record, and all of that, I'm simply going to grab this invoice and move it into that column. And now, when I go to look at this invoice, sure enough, the status has changed. So we not only can move entire columns like that, but we can adjust the grouping value for any field by simply grabbing, dragging, and dropping from one column to the next. The other thing that I want to point out, and this is a question we get very often, is this empty field. Let's go into this particular invoice 39294, and give it no grouping at all, leave it empty. It's going to show up in this gray, or effectively colorless column, the empty column, that always starts out on the far left. You could move these columns around, but you can't move the empty column. It always appears on the far left. And in this particular case, no invoice should be without an aging category. Even if it's a brand new invoice that we cut this minute, that would still put it in the current category. The way you ensure that there is no empty lane is by going into the choice field that is going to be the way we group our records by lane in the Kanban, make it a required field, and give it a default. When an invoice is first created, by default, it's current. Now it is technologically impossible for this field to remain blank. When the record is created, Ninox will assign this field the value current, and if we were to try and delete that value, and I'm going to go ahead and save changes, if we were to go in and try and delete the value, well, there isn't even a value that allows us to select empty. Because it is impossible for any record in this table to have an aging field or a grouping that is blank or empty, we no longer have need for the empty column that appeared on the left. And that's how you make that column go away. The other thing to keep in mind is it used to be that if you wanted to create a new record, you couldn't do it from within the Kanban. Well, now you can, and you can go even one step further. If you want to create a new record within the Kanban, you will note at the bottom of each column or each lane is this create record function. If I want to create a new current record, I simply collect or click the plus sign, at the bottom of the current lane, and there we have a new invoice record categorized aging current. And I'm going to delete that blank record. I don't want to save it. If I were to click on create record in the 121 plus day, notice it is immediately tagged with an aging category of 121 plus days, even though the default is current. In this case, we were effectively able to override that default by clicking create record, the plus sign, in the column of the aging category that we want assigned to the new record we're creating. Creating a new invoice from last month because you lost the original and you want to recreate the invoice but immediately put it into 31 to 60 day aging, go to that lane, click the plus sign to create a record, and there's the new invoice already aged a month in advance. Now, I said that you can do this and more. Keep in mind that to create a Kanban, you must have that categorization or grouping mechanism. In this case, it's one field, it's the aging field. What if we want to create not a new record within the group or the lane, but an entirely new group? For example, instead of aging invoices that are less than 30 days as current and 31 days or more as in these other columns, what if we want a whole new category called 14 to 30 days? It's only current for 2 weeks instead of a full month. We can do that by using the add value button that will always appear in gray to the right of the last column on the right of your Kanban. I'm going to add the value 14 to 30 days. And I'm going to give it the color orange, and I'm going to give it the icon a red square. And you can include the icons that way. Now, here we have our new column, our new swim lane. It's labeled 14 to 30. It's identified with an icon. This was a new feature, the ability to assign an icon to a lane. And it automatically has this orange color that I want to assign to the lane and to all invoice records that are in this 14 to 30 day aging. Because this is the first of our aging categories after current, I'm going to grab it and bring it, well, let's save our changes. Now I'm going to grab it and drag it all the way over so it's right to the left of 31 to 60, but to the right of current. Current is now anything that's less than 14 days old. And if I want to create an invoice in this column, again, click the record, and here we see our new category, 14 to 30, with the icon and the proper orange color. Go into administrative mode if you like, go into that field, and remove the icon by selecting this blank area here, or in the bottom right-hand corner, and you now will remove the icon from the choice in the choice field, as well as from appearing in the Kanban lane itself. Now, what we are looking at here are all of our invoices that are unpaid. Keep in mind, if the invoice has been paid, it's not going to appear on this Kanban view. So here's a look at all of the records that are currently in our invoice table where we have not received full payment against the invoice. The only criteria for what lane you're in is this field right here, the aging. But what if we want to use more than one criteria to group our records by lane? Let's look at that. Here I'm going to go into invoices, and I am going to look at our Kanban by a concatenated field. What do we know about concatenation? It is the joining together, the adding or combining together of two non-numeric values, or textual or alphanumeric values, or strings, it is concatenating or joining them together into a new string. In this particular case, we see a Kanban that is listed first alphabetically by the name of the salesperson who was in charge of this invoice and this customer transaction, and then secondarily by the month in which the transaction took place. We have our empty column over here, that's fine. We'll leave that for now. But let's go look at what we have. The first 12 columns are month 1 all the way through month 12 for A. Smith, alphabetically the first salesperson on the list. We then go back to the next salesperson, who is Linda Brooks. B comes next alphabetically, and here we see the different months for Linda Brooks, all the way through December. And then we move on to Paul Young, and we have 12 months for Mr. Young. And then finally, all the way at the end, we have S. Carls for December, the last salesperson, the last month of the year. There are a couple things to be aware of when using this concatenation methodology. The first one is you are going to have an alphabetic presentation. Second is the way Ninox handles dates. So let's first look at how we executed the concatenation, and then let's look at some of those nuances of alphabetization and how Ninox handles dates for weeks and for months to make sure we get everything in just the right order. To understand this concatenation, or using multiple fields at the same time to serve as the grouping categories for the different lanes, we have to now go in and look at how a Kanban is built. Again, in administrative mode with the red wrench glowing, I'm going to click on the name of the Kanban right there, and I'm going to select Edit Columns. Edit Columns will bring up not only the name of the view, but it will also bring up the contents of the Kanban. There's one particular field that I'm looking for, and it's the one that has the grouping icon on the far right, to the right of the name of the field. This field I happen to know is a formula, so I'm going to open up the formula and see that it's the associate month sort. And yes, it is the grouping field used to categorize the records that appear in this Kanban. Associate month sort. Let's go in and take a look at that field. I'm going to open up one invoice at random. Don't even see the field on the screen, which means we're going to go in and edit the fields. And I'm going to go all the way to the bottom to find this formula called associate month sort. That is the field that was used to establish the groupings or the categories, the swim lanes in the Kanban. And I'm going to see that this consists of a single formula, name of salesperson, plus a dash, plus the month of the date of the invoice formatted in 2 digits. There's a lot to take in here. Let's start with the beginning, the concatenation. We have one field that is non-numeric in value. It is a text field indicating the name of the salesperson who sold the product that resulted in this invoice being cut in the first place. We then add another text symbol, the dash, and we follow that up with an interpretation or interpolation of the invoice date field. We are extracting the month of this date, and we are formatting that which we extract, forcing it to be 2 digits. Let's look at a couple of different ways to do this to appreciate the alphabetic consideration and the handling of dates consideration. First, I'm going to remove Well, first, before I do anything, I'm going to copy this line of code. Now I'm going to remove that dash and simply add the two fields together with no separator in between. Because we've changed the way the field looks, the heading on our Kanban has changed accordingly. There is now no dash between the last letter of the salesperson's last name and the first digit in the numeric indicator of month, this being the digit 02, which would indicate the second month of the calendar year, February. Let's go back and change that. Let's go back in and go back all the way to the bottom to associate month sort, and let's put the dash back in. But this time, let's remove the formatting. Let's simply extract the month out of the three segments of the date, the day, the month, and the year. Let's extract the month segment. It will extract as a numeric value, and let's see what that gets us. Well, we still have our Kanban, and it's still being sorted by date and by salesperson. And while the salespeople are still in order, A. Smith comes before L. Brooks. The problem is the months are all messed up. Month 1, January, that's right. But October, month 10, is not the second month of the year. And the second month of the year, February over here, does not follow the 12th month, December. Keep in mind the rule of concatenation in Ninox. The first field in the concatenation sequence will determine the type of field it is. In this case, the first field in the concatenation sequence is a text field, salesperson, which means this numeric value that is being extracted from the date is being treated as text. We are forcing two characters a moment ago, but now we're not doing the formatting. So it's just coming out as one character. And the problem we have is if you are looking at numbers and those numbers are being represented as text, the numbers 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, and 1, 2 will all precede the number 2. The first month will indeed be month 1, January, but the last month, if we take it in order by text, is going to be September because 9 is the highest value in the text string. This is why the formatting is so crucial. Since this is being formatted as text, we want to force a leading 0 into those 9 months, January through September. That will force those 9 months to appear prior to the first month with a leading 1, which would be October. It sounds silly. Let's just look at it in action. We're going to go in and we're going to bring up our table management window, bring up the formula field, and instead of extracting the month of the date, which for the first 9 months of the year will come out as a single character or a single number, we're going to go ahead and format this numeric extract and force it to be at least 2 characters. October, November, December, by default, are 2 characters, 10, 11, and 12th month of the year. No need to force the leading 0. The first 9 months of the year would not have a character prior to the month if it weren't for this forced 2-digit formatting. And now that we are forcing in a leading 0 for those first 9 months of the year, now we see a Kanban that looks the way we would expect. The third month is the third column, the last month is the 12th column, and everything is appearing in order. September, the 09th month, just previous to October, the 10th month, and the 11th month precedes the 12th and follows the 10th. So when dealing with the month of the year, or even the day of the month, and we're going to look at weekdays in a moment, remember that numbers treated as text do not sort in the same sequence as numbers treated as numbers. Numbers treated as numbers, 2 comes after 1, and 11 comes after 10. Numbers treated as text, 10 comes after 1, 11 comes after 10, and 2 would follow 19 because of the treatment of the numeric values as actual textual values. Let's look at this again and see how we did it. I want to build a Kanban that tells me not only the month in which the invoice took place, but I want to know the day of the week. I would like to know for my business that is open 7 days a week, which is the busiest day of the week consistently. I don't care if it's the 1st, the 26th, or the 52nd week of the year, or any week in between. What is the busiest day of the week? Monday through Friday, and weekends, Saturday and Sunday. Let's look at how we do that. I picked a record at random, and I'm going to go into Edit Fields, and I'm going to add a new field, which is going to be a formula field. And this is going to be the weekday, not the weekday. Weekdays are Monday through Friday. This is going to be the day of the week, week space day, which will include potentially Saturday and Sunday. The formula, very simple. Lowercase weekday, capital NAME, weekday name, and we want to extract the name of the weekday from the date of the invoice. Now, I don't need to see this on the screen, so as we did with the concatenated sort field, I'm going to go ahead and null this out, or put the word null in the display field only if, to ensure that it does not appear on screen, but does remain available to me in building a Kanban, which I will do now. I'm going to go ahead, click the plus sign, select Kanban, and call this my weekday view. I'm going to click OK, and now I need to do a little resetting. I'm going to click on the name that I just assigned this view and go into Edit Columns. I do not want to sort this according to the concatenated field of the name of the associate and the month of the sale. I'll get rid of that formula. I want to view this grouped by the weekday, the name of the day of the week. And there we have it, but again, out of order. Friday is never going to be the first day of the week. And Saturday doesn't follow Monday, I wish it did, and Sunday does not immediately precede Thursday. These values are text values, and they are in the proper order alphabetically. F is the first letter in the 7 letters that designate the days of the week. F, M, S, S, T, T, and W. This is not really the best way to look at date information. So we're going to make a quick change. I'm going to go back into this field. I'm going to select that weekday field, and I'm going to just change this by virtue of a concatenation. I'm going to use another function, which is the weekday function of the invoice date, and I'm going to concatenate that by inserting a space, a dash, and another space, and then adding after that the name of the day of the week. Watch what I get instead. Here we see now, excellent. The first day of the week is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, followed by the last day of the week, according to Ninox, being Sunday. Some things to keep in mind. Why didn't I force format a leading zero? Because there are only 7 days of the week. There are not 10. We would never have a double-digit day of the week, so 1 through 6 will suffice. Second, keep in mind that by default, Ninox is a base 0, Monday base system. The first day of the week is day 0, and day 0 is Monday. Day 1 is Tuesday, day 2 is Wednesday, all the way through day 6 being Sunday. If you want to go with a 7-day Sunday-based week, where the first day of the week is Sunday, and the first day is day 1, and the last day is day 7, log into the member portal at www.nioxus.com and look for the template called Convert Week to 7. The template, Convert Week to 7, is a little function that we built that allows you to reconfigure Ninox so Monday becomes the second day of the week, number 2, Sunday is the first day of the week, and that's day 1. And the reality is you can make any day of the week. You can make Monday the first day of the week, but have the first day be 1 and the last day 7. There's just a little code block that we built, and members at Nioxus can download that code block to redesign the sequencing of our days of the week. But the important thing to remember here is that the day of the week name is not going to have Monday at the beginning and Sunday at the end. But if we concatenate, if we add the numeric value as defined by, and let's just go back down to the weekday field, as defined by this formula right there, weekday spelled out in all lower caps, this will extract the day of the week in a numeric format. This will extract the day of the week in an alphabetic format. This is the name of the weekday of the invoice date. This is the numeric value, the index of the day of the invoice date. We could have done the same thing with month. We could have extracted the month of the invoice date and I'll just highlight this portion, the name of the month of the invoice date, and we would get a Kanban that looks like this. January is 1st. Oh, we're back to this again. Remember, when dealing with months, unlike days, there are more than 10. Some months are designated with an index of 1 digit, some months with 2. So if you're going to do this technique on months, remember, and we would now call this the month sort, remember to force the numeric value of the month to be formatted using the format command with 2 zeros. That way, the months January through September will be correctly reflected in the proper order here with this system. So that's a little bit about swim lanes. That's a little bit about the Kanban view. It's great for using for things like aging, for things like looking at the visual aspect of inventory. There are 2 ways to look at that visual aspect. There is the card view, which is effectively unsorted, or my favorite, the Kanban view, which not only gives us the graphic image element, but also allows to categorize things according to lane or grouping. Remember that with an administrative mode, you can change your groups. You can add a new group. Let's add group F. And now we have a group F, and we can create records in any group by clicking on the Create Record plus sign at the bottom of that group column. We create a new a new item number. We put it in group F, and there we go. New invoice, new column, everything is great. And don't forget, if you want to recategorize something, for example, this men's hat is being moved out of group C into the new group F, you don't have to open it, change it, save it. Simply grab, drag, and drop. And now the hat is a group F record. And that's the Kanban. It started in the Toyota Motor Company, and it's now a fabulous and valuable part of our Ninox database system. If you are managing financial information, whether it's aging or looking at the month in which sales took place, remember your concatenation, remember how we format month information using 2 characters, so January will be first, December last. And remember, the Kanban is a great way to create these lanes or buckets of information. You can scroll within each one, and if you go to the very bottom, easily create new records, and in fact, create entirely new categories. The Kanban was introduced less than a year ago. It's already received a major update. It's a very powerful view. It's very easy to use. You just need to remember that when creating the Kanban, the column is going to be defined by the one field that is the group field in the definition of the view itself. In this case, the month sort field is the grouping field. You can only have one grouping field, but using concatenation, you can have multiple fields in the group. And that's all there is to it. Thank you so much for joining here in this class today. Thank you so much for being part of the global Ninox community. And thank you most of all for supporting what we do here at Nioxus Corporation. I'll be back next week with another new training video. Make sure to check us out at nioxus.com, www.nioxus.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at support@nioxus.com. And until next week, thanks so much for joining me. I can't wait to see you again in the classroom. Bye-bye, everybody.